Symphony of a restless night. Everything was sleeping, as if the universe were a mistake. The wind, blowing uncertainly, was a formless flag unfurled over a non-existent army post. High, strong guts ripped through nothing at all, and the window frame shook their panes to make the edges rattle. Underlying everything, the harsh night was the tomb of God, and my soul felt sorry for God. Suddenly, a new order of universal things acted on the city. The wind whistled in its lulls, and there was a slumbering awareness of countless agitations on high. Then the night closed like a trapdoor, and a vast calm made me wish I'd been sleeping. During the first days of autumn, when nightfall arrived suddenly, as if prematurely, and it seems we took longer to do our day's work, I enjoy while still working the thought of not working, which the darkness brings. For the darkness is night, and night means sleep, home, freedom. When the lights come on, dispelling darkness from the large office, and we continue our day's work in the beginning of night, I feel a comfort that is absurd, like a remembrance belonging to someone else. And I'm at peace with the numbers I write, as if I were reading while waiting to fall asleep. We're all slaves of external circumstances. A sunny day transports us from a cafe on a narrow side street to wide open fields. An overcast sky in the country makes us close up, taking shelter as best as we can in the house without doors of our own self. The onset of night, even in the midst of daytime activities, enlarges like a slowly opening fan our awareness that we ought to rest. But the work doesn't slow down, it gets livelier. We no longer work, we amuse ourselves with the labor to which we're condemned, and all of a sudden, across the huge column sheet of my numerary destiny, the old house of my elderly aunts, shut off from the world, shelters the drowsy 10 o'clock tea, and the kerosene lamp of my lost childhood, glowing only on the linen-covered table, blinds me to the sight of Moira, illuminated by a black electricity infinities away from me. The maid, who is even older than my aunt, bring in the tea, along with the vestiges of her interrupted nap, and the affectionately patient grumpiness of old-time servants. And across all my dead past, I enter items and totals without a single mistake. I retreat into myself, get lost in myself, forget myself in faraway nights, uncontaminated by duty and the world, undefiled by mystery and the future. And so gentle is the sensation that estranges me from debits and credits, that if by chance I'm asked a question, I answer in a soft voice, as if my being were hollow, as if it were nothing more than a typewriter I carry around with me, portable, open and ready. It doesn't faze me when my dreams are interrupted. They're so gentle that I keep dreaming them as I speak, write, answer, or even discuss. And through it all, the long-lost tea finishes. The office is going to close. From the ledger which I slowly shut, I raise my eyes, sore from the tears they didn't shed. And with confused feelings I accept, because I must, that with the closing of my office, my dream also closes. That as my hand shuts the ledger, it also pulls a veil over my irretrievable past, that I'm going to life's bed wide awake, unaccompanied and without peace. In the ebb and flow of my confused consciousness, like two tides in the black night, where the destinies of nostalgia and desolation meet. Sometimes I think I'll never leave the Rua dos Douradores, and having written this, it seems to me eternity. Not pleasure, not glory, not power. Freedom, only freedom. To go from the phantoms of faith to the ghosts of reason is merely to change cells. Art if it frees us from the abstract idols of old, should also free us from magnanimous ideas and social concerns, which are likewise idols. To find our personality by losing it, faith itself endorses this destiny. And a deep and weary disdain for all those who work for mankind, for all those who fight for their country and give their lives so that civilization may continue. A disdain full of disgust for those who don't realize that the only reality is each man's soul, and that everything else, the exterior world and other people, is but an unaesthetic nightmare, like the result, in dreams, of a mental indigestion. My aversion to effort becomes an almost writhing horror before all forms of violent effort. War, energetic and productive labor, helping others, all this strikes me as the product of an impertinence. Everything useful and external tastes frivolously and trivial in the light of my soul's supreme reality, and next to the pure sovereign splendor of my more original and frequent dreams. These, for me, are more real. It's not the cracked walls of my rented room, nor the shabby desk in the office where I work, nor the poverty of the same old downtown streets in between, which I've crossed and recrossed so many times they seem to have assumed the immobility of the irreparable. None of that is responsible for my frequent feeling of nausea over the squalor of daily life. It's the people who habitually surround me, the souls who know me through conversation and daily contact without knowing me at all. The other ones who cause a salivary knot of physical disgust to form in my throat. It's the sordid monotony of their lives, outwardly parallel to my own, and the keen awareness that I'm their fellow man. That is what dresses me in convict's clothes, places me in a jail cell, and makes me apocryphal and beggarly. There are times when each detail of the ordinary interests me for its own sake, and I feel a fondness for things because I can read them clearly. Then I see, as Vieira said, that Sousa, in his descriptions, saw the ordinary in its singularity, and I have the poetic soul that inspired the intellectual age of poetry among the Greeks. But there are also moments, such as the one that oppresses me now, when I feel my own self far more than I feel external things, and everything transformed into a night of rain and mud where, lost in the solitude of an out-of-the-way station, I wait intermittently for the next third-class train. Yes, my particular virtue of being very often objective and thus sidetracked from thinking about myself suffers lapses of affirmation, as do all virtues and even all vices. And I start to wonder how I'm able to go on, how I dare have the faint-heartedness to be here among these people, exactly like them, in true conformity to their shoddy illusion. Like flashes from a distant lighthouse, I see all the solutions offered by the imagination's female side: flight, suicide, renunciation, grandiose acts of our aristocratic self-awareness, the swashbuckling novel of existences without balconies. But the ideal Juliet of the best possible reality closed the high window of the literary encounter on the fictitious Romeo of my blood. She obeys her father, he obeys his. The feud between the Montagues and the Capulets continues. The curtain falls on what didn't happen, and I go on home, to my rented room where I loathe the landlady who isn't home, her children I hardly ever see, and the people from the office that I'll see only tomorrow. With the collar of a clerk's coat turned up without astonishment over the neck of a poet, with my boots, always purchased in the same shop, automatically avoiding the puddles of cold rain, and with a bit of mixed concern for having once more forgotten my umbrella and the dignity of my soul. Dolores Interlude. An object tossed into a corner, a rag that fell onto the road. My contemptible being faints to the world. I envy all people, because I'm not them, since this always seemed to me like the most impossible of all impossibilities, is what I yearn for every day, and despair of in every sad moment. A dull blast of grim sunlight burned my eyes' physical sensation of seeing. A hot yellow languished in the black green of the trees. The torpor. All of a sudden, as if a surgical hand of destiny had operated on a long-standing blindness with immediate and sensational results, I lift my gaze from my anonymous life to the clear recognition of how I live. And I see that everything I've done, thought, or been is a species of delusion or madness. I'm amazed by what I managed not to see. I marvel at all that I was and that I now see I'm not. I look at my past life as at a field lit up by the sun where it breaks through the clouds, and I note with metaphysical astonishment how my most deliberate acts, my clearest ideas, and my most logical intentions were, after all, no more than congenital drunkenness, inherent madness, and huge ignorance. I didn't even act anything out. I was the role that got acted. At most, I was the actor's motions. All that I've done, thought, or been is a series of submissions, either to a false self that I assume belonged to me because I expressed myself through it to the outside, or to a weight of circumstances that I suppose was the air I breathe. In this moment of seeing, I suddenly find myself isolated, an exile where I've always thought I was a citizen. At the heart of my thoughts, I wasn't I. I'm dazed by a sarcastic terror of life, a despondency that exceeds the limits of my conscious being. I realized that I was all error and deviation, that I never lived, that I existed only in so far as I filled time with consciousness and thought. I feel in this moment like a man who wakes up after a slumber full of real dreams, or like a man freed by an earthquake from the dim light of the prison he'd grown used to. This sudden awareness of my true being, of this being that has always sleepily wandered between what it feels and what it sees, weighs on me like an untold sentence to serve. It's so hard to describe what I feel when I feel I really exist and my soul is a real entity that I don't know what human words could define it. I don't know if I have a fever, as I feel I do, or if I've stopped having the fever of sleeping through life. Yes, I repeat, I'm like a traveler who suddenly finds himself in a strange town without knowing how he got there, which makes me think of those who lost their memory and for a long time are not themselves but someone else. I was someone else for a long time, since birth and consciousness, and suddenly I've woken up in the middle of a bridge, leaning over the river and knowing that I exist more solidly than the person I was up till now. But the city is unknown to me. The streets are new and the trouble has no cure. And so, leaning over the bridge, I wait for the truth to go away and let me return to being fictitious and non-existent, intelligent and natural. It was just a brief moment, and it's already over. Once more, I see the furniture all around me, the pattern on the old wallpaper, and the sun through the dusty panes. I saw the truth for a moment. For a moment, I was consciously what great men are their entire lives. I recall their words and deeds and wonder if they were also successfully tempted by the demon of reality. To know nothing about yourself is to live. To know yourself badly is to think. To know yourself in a flash, as I did in this moment, is to have a fleeting notion of the intimate monad, the soul's magic word. But that sudden light scorches everything, consumes everything. It strips us naked of even ourselves. It was just a moment, and I saw myself. I can no longer even say what I was. And now I'm sleepy, because I think, I don't know why, that the meaning of it all is to sleep. Sometimes I feel, I'm not sure why, a touch of foretold death. Perhaps it's an indefinite sickness which, because it doesn't materialize in pain, tends to become spiritualized in nothingness, the end. Or perhaps it's a weariness that needs a slumber far deeper than sleeping affords. All I know is that I feel like a sick man who has been getting steadily worse, until at last he calmly and without regret extends his feeble hands over the bedspread he had been clutching. And then I wonder what this thing is that we call death. I don't mean the mystery of death, which I can't begin to fathom, but the physical sensation of ceasing to live. Humanity is afraid of death, but indecisively. The normal man makes a good soldier in combat. The normal man, when sick or old, rarely looks with horror at the abyss of nothing, though he admits its nothingness. This is because he lacks imagination, and nothing is less worthy of a thinking man than to see death as a slumber. Why a slumber if death doesn't resemble sleep? Basic to sleep is the fact we wake up from it, as we presumably do not from death. If death resembles sleep, we should suppose that we wake up from it, but this is not what the normal man imagines. He imagines death as a slumber no one wakes up from, which means nothing. Death doesn't resemble slumber, I said, since in slumber one is alive and sleeping. And I don't know how death can resemble anything at all for us, since we have no experience of it, nor anything to compare it with. Whenever I see a dead body, death seems to me a departure. The corpse looks to me like a suit that was left behind. Someone went away and didn't need to take the one and only outfit he'd worn. Silence emerges from the sound of the rain and spreads in a crescendo of grey monotony over the narrow street I contemplate. I'm sleeping while awake, standing by the window, leaning against it as against everything. I search in myself for the sensations I feel before these falling threads of darkly luminous water that stands out from the grimy building facade and especially from the open windows. And I don't know what I feel or what I want to feel. I don't know what to think or what I am. All the pent-up bitterness of my life removes. Before my sensationless eyes, the suit of natural happiness it wears in the random events that fill up each day. I realize that, while often happy and often cheerful, I'm always sad. And the part of me that realizes this is behind me, as if bent over my leaning self at the window, as if looking over my shoulder or even over my head to contemplate, with eyes more intimate than my own, the slow and now wavy rain which filigrees the grey and inclement air, to struck off all duties, even those not assigned to us, to repudiate all homes, even those that weren't ours, to live off vestiges and the ill-defined, in grand purple robes of madness and in counterfeit laces of dream majesties, to be something, anything, that doesn't feel the weight of the rain outside, nor the anguish of inner emptiness, to wander without thought or soul, sensation without sensation, along mountain roads and through valleys hidden between steep slopes, into the far distance, irrevocably immersed, to be lost in landscapes like paintings, a colored non-existence in the background. A light gust of wind, which I can't feel on this side of the window, breaks the even fall of rain into aerial discrepancies. A part of the sky hidden from view is clearing. I notice this because I can now make out the calendar on the wall through the less than clean window that faces my own. I forget, I don't see, I don't think. The rain stops, and for a moment, a fine dust of miniature diamonds hangs in the air, like tiny crumbs from an enormous tablecloth bluely shaken on high. I can feel that part of the sky has cleared. I can see more distinctly the calendar through the window opposite. It has a woman's face, and the rest is easy because I remember it, and the toothpaste is the brand everyone knows. But what was I thinking about before I got lost in seeing? I don't know. Effort? Will? Life? A huge onslaught of light reveals a now almost entirely blue sky. But there is no peace. There will never be. At the bottom of my heart, an old well in a corner of the farm that was sold, a dust-coated memory of childhood shut up in the attic of someone else's house. I have no peace, or even, alas, the desire to have it. Only as a lack of personal hygiene can I understand my wallowing in this flat, invariable life I lead. This dust or filth stuck on the surface of never changing. We should wash our destiny the way we wash our body, and change life the way we change clothes, not to preserve life as when we eat and sleep, but out of objective respect for ourselves, which is what personal hygiene is all about. There are many people whose lack of hygiene is not a chosen condition, but a shrugging of the intellect's shoulder. And there are many whose dullness and sameness of life is not what they wanted for their life, nor the result of not having wanted any life, but just a dulling of their own self-awareness, a spontaneous irony of the intellect. There are pigs repelled by their own filth that don't draw away from it because the feeling of repulsion is so strong it paralyzes. As when a frightened man freezes instead of fleeing the danger, there are pigs like me that wallow in their destiny, not drawing away from the banality of daily life because they're enthralled by their own impotence. They're like birds captivated by the thought of the snake, like flies that hover around branches without seeing a thing, until they're within the sticky reach of the chameleon's tongue. In a similar sort of way, I promenade my conscious unconsciousness along my tree branch of the usual. I promenade my destiny that goes forward, though I don't go anywhere, and my time that advances, though I stay put. And the only thing that alleviates my monotony are these brief commentaries I make with respect to it. I'm grateful that my cell has windows inside the bars, and on the dust of the necessary that covers the panes, I write my name in capital letters, my daily signature on my covenant with death. What death? No, not even with death. Whoever lives like me doesn't die. He terminates, wilts, devegetates. The place where he was remains without him being there. The street where he walked remains without him being seen on it. The house where he lived is inhabited by not him. That's all, and we call it nothing. But not even this tragedy of negation can be staged to applause, for we don't even know for sure if it's nothing. We, these vegetable manifestations of both truth and life, thus on both the outside and the inside of the panes, grandchildren of destiny and stepchildren of God, who married eternal night when she was widowed by the chaos that fathered us. To depart from the Dwaradores for the impossible, to leave my desk for the unknown. But with this journey intersected by reason, the great book that says we existed